Right, to further unpack this, let's now welcome Professor David Monyae, who's an Associate Professor of Political Science as well as International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. Professor, thank you so much for your time today. Welcome. So Team South Africa has quite a lot of its agenda to push through, particularly on issues of funding, energy, as well as health security, establishing digital public infrastructure, just among others of those four priorities that were outlined by the president. Let's talk about those. How do you see Team South Africa actually achieving this?
I think the president has touched upon all critical issues. And I think it's also important to mention that this is nothing new. It's something that Indonesia, as a chair of G20, India as well as Brazil, all these are global South countries, have over the years, the last 3 to 4 years, have been pushing for precisely the importance of these important issues to ensure that the health of the global economy remains in good state. And the importance of multilateralism, particularly G20, that at this global historical juncture, it is important that the developed countries and developing countries find a way to close those gaps. The cost of capital, for instance, it's reached a stage in which it's becoming difficult for poor countries to access capital. And when they do access capital, it comes in a very expensive and then resulting in high debt. And they're left out on issues of digital economy and the climate change. And therefore, I thought the speech was quite clear. And it's just a matter of finding out other developed countries, to what extent are they going to play around and in these issues early on to ensure that we have a successful G20 in November.
Absolutely, Professor. I mean, this also comes at a time, as you've rightly pointed out, that the country we know is in serious economic decline. So how far then will this summit, you think, as well as G20 presidency, go in promoting, as well as attracting new businesses, as well as investment, particularly geared at trying to alleviate some of these issues and challenges that we face as a country?
This is a major achievement for South Africa and the African continent. I think this is the very first meeting on the African soil. And it's not just South Africa. Africa is also involved. It's in the room. And major issues that have been raised by South Africa, also South Africa alongside other African countries within the AU, are now being raised at a much important summit with the support of the developed countries. And I think it really now depends with the developed countries. They have been promising a lot of issues in the past decade in terms of reaching out to the poor countries, closing the gap on issues of green industrialization, on issue of climate change, and really deal with impact of floods that we're having, as we had earlier on today. There has been floods in Durban and so many other places. I think as head of state and chair, President Ramaphosa is doing extremely well in guiding G20 in 2025.
And the acceleration, Professor, of efforts towards the sustainable development goals. I mean, we know that the critical issue there of debt vulnerability of many countries, including South Africa, have to be addressed. South Africa is currently trying to navigate a national budget and lots of uncertainty as to how the country will actually meet its demanding obligations.
Oh, indeed. These are challenges not only faced by South Africa, these are challenges faced by the entire continent and so many other countries in Latin America and Asia. And therefore, this summit and the ministers of finance are quite critical, because this particular task group, it's critical alongside the Sherpa group in guiding the G20 to ensure that they close the gaps on issues that are causing havoc across the world. Debt issues, poverty, issues of sustainability, as well as maintaining multilateralism. You need to keep all these countries speaking and finding solutions to issues affecting the global economy, and therefore dealing with massive poverty that we face globally.
And for that, Professor, we need reform. So then what is our advantage as well as positive impact, especially in pushing ahead for the much needed reforms as well as policies that are centered as well as geared towards our overall development as a country? What agendas will Team South Africa, do you think, need to be prioritizing in this regard? The country is still in the midst of very frosty relations with the United States, with Minister Lamula stating that the G20 will actually provide strategic direction towards establishing a more equitable, representative, as well as fit for purpose international order.
I think the very first thing is that we should not expect for a big bang solution in terms of all our challenges to be resolved in 2025, given the second coming of President Trump and the manner in which he directly disagrees with most of issues on the agenda. However, there is level-headedness on part of President Ramaphosa in South Africa in terms of avoiding overreacting and panic and reaching out to the United States. And let's face it, there won't be any G20 without the United States. It's the most powerful economic power in the world. And therefore, we need to keep the United States in the room. And we need to reach out. It's a give and take. And therefore, if there's a delegation going to the United States and reaching out to China, India, Russia, Brazil, and other notable countries such as Japan, to ensure that we somehow move and meet some of the demands that are placed by South Africa, Africa, and the developing world.
Professor, thank you so much. A great input there. That is Professor David Monyae there from the University of Johannesburg. They're weighing in on the G20 meeting, focusing on South African priorities.